Now, it's no secret that SRAM has been working on an electronic drivetrain for a few years now. We've seen it on Nino Schurter's bike, and we've seen a few Instagram spy shots as well too. But it exists, and it's right in there. Now, we all know that derailleurs and batteries get people riled up. But let's go have a look at the new SRAM AXS and see what it's all about. So the 12-speed AXS group, spelled AXS but pronounced AXS, is going to be available this coming April in two different variants. An XX1 version that's going to retail for $2,000, and that includes a bunch of titanium bits and a carbon derailleur cage. And if you want to save about $100, there's also an XO1 variant, and that uses an aluminum cage and some stainless steel hardware. Now, for comparison's sake, an XX1 AXS group is going to cost about $500 more than an XX1 mechanical group, but it's also going to cost about $500 less than an XTR Di2 group. So either way, this stuff is going to be pretty pricey. You're only going to see it on high-end bikes costing $5,000 or more. Now, when it comes to weight, because it always does for some of us, I think you're going to be surprised. If I had to guess, I would have thought that this stuff would weigh more than the mechanical group. I mean, you've got tiny little motors, you've got a bunch of little gears, you've got batteries, but SRAM says that a ready-to-run group comes in 5 grams less. XX1 AXS versus XX1 mechanical. Now, 5 grams is basically a wash, but I think that's still pretty impressive. The batteries, now they only weigh 25 grams each. And where you're saving some weight is with the cable and housing especially, because there's obviously none of that. This is a wireless group. The AXS group sees a small battery clip onto the back of the derailleur, and it gets its orders from the shifter through an encrypted wireless network, Bluetooth, and ANT+. Let's take a closer look at each component, starting with the shifter. Now, SRAM is calling this unit a controller, but I think we're going to stick with shifter for now. I was expecting a slim collar-like unit with a few small buttons on it, but the shifter is actually similar in size to a mechanical unit. Now, it is a little bit smaller, and it attaches via a standard matchmaker clamp, but the real neat thing here is how you shift. There are 3 different ways to operate this thing. 2 from below the bar and 1 from above. Shift feeling is definitely different than the mechanical unit too. Shimano's XTR Di2 and XT Di2, I feel like those were designed to mimic how a mechanical system feels, where this definitely has more of a button feel to it. It's still very tactile, but it is different than the mechanical shifter. The real party trick here is how you can use SRAM's AXS app to configure the shifter and the reverb button. You can configure these buttons to shift any direction you like or control your seat post. Now, I'm not good with computers and technology. I am terrible with them. And I managed to figure this thing out in about 20 to 30 seconds. So, what exactly happens when you want to shift? Well, you hit this button up at the shifter, and that sends a signal down to the derailleur via that encrypted wireless network, and it tells the motor to get moving. Now, that little motor in there spins at 80,000 RPM, which is more than 10 times as fast as the engine in your average road car, and also completely useless for a derailleur. Now, that's where the tiny gearbox comes in. Down inside here, there's a bunch of tiny gears, and that converts that immensely fast RPM to torque, just like so. Let's say that you have a crash or you catch the derailleur on a rock and you bend your hanger. What are you going to do then? Because obviously things aren't quite adjusted right. Now, that's where the tiny trim button on the underside of the shifter comes in. Now, this moves the derailleur very small amount so you could recenter it over the cogs. It's basically reteaching the derailleur where to stop moving. In theory, this stuff should almost never need to be touched. Now, when I reviewed Shimano's Di2 setup, that was the real plus to it. It was heavy and it was a pain in the ass to install, but once it was installed, I never had to touch it. You hit the button, it goes to the shift, no matter how shitty it is outside, there's no way it can go out of adjustment, it just plain worked. And that needs to happen with this. Now, I'm gonna head home from here with an AXS drivetrain of my own to review. It's gonna get about a zillion miles put on it through the rest of this winter in Squamish, and you'll be able to read about how it performs this spring. So stay tuned for that.